One of the hallmarks of a narcissistic personality is that they will seek comfort and encouragement and special permissions from those around them when they do the wrong thing and suffer as a result. So, one example would be if they try and push their desires or their opinions on another person, and the other person puts their boundaries in place, however graciously. And then that narcissistic person will get upset. They may be crying, they'll be complaining to anyone who will listen, and um, and the people around them will be required to tell them how innocent and how good they are, and how the other person involved is an ogre. So that's one example of self-inflicted suffering. In a nutshell, self-inflicted suffering is suffering that comes from not walking in the will of the living God who speaks. And it can take many, many forms. In fact, we are now entering a season when many people who have for a long time got away with doing their own will and calling it the Father's will are starting to experience the suffering that comes of walking according to their own desires rather than truly seeking the counsel of the Lord to know His will and to do it. Scripture in the New Testament makes a distinction between the suffering that someone goes through when they're just doing their own will and the suffering that we go through as someone who is truly submitting to the will of God and suffering for the sake of the gospel. We're told that His rod and His staff will comfort us. We're also told that Jesus, even though He was the Son of God, He learned obedience through suffering. So that suffering would be the suffering that comes through being disobedient. We don't hear about that scripture often, do we? Early on, the Lord showed me that He doesn't see the suffering that's self-inflicted in the same way that He sees the suffering that happens when someone is walking out righteousness in obedience to Him. So, brothers and sisters, it's important for ourselves to discern self-inflicted suffering in ourselves because it helps us to discern the Lord's boundaries for us. It's also important to discern self-inflicted suffering in others. Again, it helps us to discern the Lord's boundaries for us. Because, for example, if someone does the wrong thing and they come to us and they're demanding our time, our attention, and for us to explicitly say things that are not in integrity as a result of the suffering that they've inflicted on themselves, the Lord is very likely to call us to gently but firmly put boundaries in place and not give them the time and the attention that they are demanding. I pray that this helps someone. If the videos are blessing you, I do encourage you to like, share, subscribe,